Afternoon. Today we have Adam Fichman, the president of Lifted Logic, joining us. Adam's been interviewed by Wall Street Journal and Forbes, and here he is today. He's going to share some of his time and wisdom with all of us that are joining on this webinar today. Adam, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. It's good to be here. Good to see you guys. I'm gonna turn my video on. There I am. Yeah, thank you guys for having me here. I was kind of telling some of you guys that were here a little bit earlier. I think I see a lot of really familiar, friendly faces, but I want you guys to unmute at some point during this and interrupt me. And again, make it selfish. Make it about what you guys really want to talk about. Design, development. You know, I own a digital agency, and I'll give you guys the super fast background, but I'd rather make it useful for you guys in terms of questions that you run into. I'll do a very fast version of throughput and kind of how we do our marketing valuation pieces. But again, I want this to be for you guys. I'll hop on my laptop at some point here and share my screen on that, or share my screen on the tablet here, and we can pull up examples. If you guys want to go through AdWords, analytics, search, if you want to see my 19-year-old dog that's deaf and blind that's hopping up next to me, nothing. It's all good. So Deb, thanks for the intro. I'll give you guys the super fast version of the background. I grew up here in Kansas City. I started programming really young. I got into video and photo when I was about 12, and then design a little bit later on in life. Fast forward to 2003, I started a company that was one of YouTube's main competitors. We grew to about 20 million users a month. So we were the 17th largest media aggregate of user content on the web. I was fortunate enough that I got to work with Mark when he was starting Facebook. There was about 9 employees at the time. He brought me on for soft asset valuation consulting. Basically, how much was each piece of information that they could collect worth? Right? Okay. Why was a pregnant?
You're talking about Mark Zuckerberg, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yep. So, basically it was, the conversation was, why is a pregnant woman worth more than a non-pregnant woman, right? How much more is she purchasing? How much more valuable is she worth to an advertiser, a marketer, a diaper company, a diaper wipe company? There's actually a really good article about Target knowing that a girl was pregnant before her parents did. So if you just Google Target and daughter pregnancy, you can see how they kind of tracked her and then ended up letting her parents know that she was pregnant without them knowing. I was fortunate enough that at my first company, we got our provisional patents, and we were working with local IP firm Hovey Williams, and we created the software that put videos on cell phones. As a 22-year-old that just graduated college, I thought that hundreds of millions of dollars meant that I was happy, and that was what happiness was. And I realized very quickly that I was really chasing purpose. Happiness was one of the emotions that we all feel on a regular basis, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't control and constantly feel happy. And largely it was because I had no purpose. So some of the guys that we've worked with over in Japan introduced me to a concept called ikigai, which I'm going to show you guys. This is why I am where I am. I'm going to share my screen when I pull it up. It is what they teach their kids on what to live their life for. And so let me get here and flip it onto. It's scary how comfortable with Zoom I'm getting now. We used it a lot before, but it's just too much Zoom for one day for me. So this is Ikigai. This is why I started Lifted Logic. This is why I like doing webinars. This is why I like working with small companies. And it's really a reason for being. Again, we all say happiness, but if we lose a parent, a child, a dog, a cat, a pet, a friend, a loved one, we don't feel happy, no matter how good our day went. But the concept of purpose is fluid and shifts throughout our lives. So I started Lifted Logic instead of retiring about 12 years ago. And it was largely because I wanted to have a reason for being. When you remove kind of that need for money out of the equation, life tells a different story. And so we started as a invite only boutique agency that was never going to grow more than 10 employees. We have 30. So I have been fighting growth every step of the way. We have no salespeople. We hand select all of our projects, and I see a few people we've worked with on the call, so that's awesome. A few that we've been able to donate to, and a lot of good friendly faces and friends from the past. So it's nice to see all you guys.
Adam, really quickly, and I know some of us want to know that, how did you remove the money from yourself to control?
Well, I had two very good mentors in Henry Block and Bob Rainier, and they told me about something. I told them, I was like, this makes me feel gross. And I said, well, there's this thing called an irrevocable trust, which means that you basically give up your money. I was like, okay, that sounds great. Now you realize when you put somebody in here, you set all these stipulations of how and when you can access your money. And I was a very proud 22-year-old and started back over with $20,000 to my name. And everything else is available when I hit the ripe old age of 50, or unlikely, hopefully, have medical issues. There is some stipulations on that, but it's not for cars, it's not for fun, it's not for anything else. And then I challenged myself to rebuild my life. And largely, I think I had imposter syndrome. I didn't deserve to have that success. So many other people deserved it way more than me. I was at the right place at the right time. So I've been fortunate through our companies and through some of those pieces, right? I've been able to help do about 500 million in gross revenue before I hit 30. So it's been something that I've been able to prove back to myself. And I was telling a few of the people earlier on the call, my purpose really shifted the most in my life with my first son. I just had my second one 6 days ago. So yeah, thanks, Shannon. Yeah. Hey, thanks guys. Yeah, it's been wild. The hospital was an odd place to be at right now. That's for sure. It was a little like a dystopian, weird sci-fi movie with a bunch of masks and people mumbling behind them. But I want to do a super fast version of throughput and how we calculate values. And so I can kind of give you guys a few of those tools. Again, some of you guys have already heard it, but then I really want you guys to chime in with what you want to talk about. The kind of the areas that we focus on are, a lot of the digital storytelling, using video, photo to tell stories and offset expectations, usually internal expectations that we kind of take for granted, SEO, paid search, anything really digital marketing wise is kind of within the wheelhouse. Probably not going to be your expert on newspaper placement or radio ad placement. I can tell you how to track it, but not my area of expertise. We are not a traditional ad agency. We do all of our work in-house, which is a little unique for us and for the industry. So of those 30 people, 28 of them are making things full time. So let me share my screen and do throughput really fast. So one of the most common misconceptions that we have when we're doing marketing and why we turn down clients is not budgetary. And a lot of people think, well, I'm probably too small for you guys. And that's the wrong answer. There is not a too small for us. There's the falsehood of expectations that we manage substantially more. And this is where most businesses end up screwing up when they first start, is that it's so tempting to say yes outside of scope because you need it. And you think you can work your way back in it. So a good example is like that client that came to us and says, I've gone through 10 marketing agencies. All of them were awful. I have spent the last 2 years, and you're like, okay, while there probably a good chance that some of them were not very good, were all 10 out of 10 awful. That chance at everything that they did was bad, right? You kind of get that feeling where you're like, I think this client may be a very hard to please client, and they may be the commonality here, but you know what? I think I can do different, right? And those end up being the clients that bite us all in the ass later on. And so a lot of it is that we've really focused on expectations. If a client says, hey, I have a $5,000 marketing budget, and I say, great, how much gross revenue do you need to make back to make this make sense? And they say $1 million. And I'm going, okay, so you're going to spend $5,000. In order for me to make you happy, I got to make you $1 million. And you sell pens at $1 a piece. We may not be the right fit, right? And a lot of that is where we see these expectational management of sales-based companies. Like if I'm a salesperson, I'm not incentivized to really work on that, right? My job is to sell. And while that's not always true, that tends to be what we see a lot of our all across the board, a lot of industries and a lot of clients kind of working around. So correlation and causation, very different. And this is how we kind of set our expectations for measuring marketing efficacy. All right. Let us do this. You guys are going to see emails piling in the whole time, so enjoy that. Yep. All right. So can you guys all see my screen all right? Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. I was waiting for you, Stoney. All right.
No, you're doing fine, because one of the things I'm so concerned about is, we had one of our members, Russell Stovers in Fairway, that just closed permanently, and I want to grab some advice from you to tell those people that, hey, we need to keep you up and going. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of doing so. Well, okay. So there's I'll take an aside for a second. I think that there's this big disconnect right now where a lot of companies, I've heard out there saying, don't stop your marketing, right? Continue doing marketing, continue doing all this. And I inherently disagree with the majority of that advice. Most of our clientele right now, we're telling them, look, I know you've got a contract with us, but I think you need to pause and slow down your spend, because I don't think that you're going to be able to make it back up, at least in the time period in which you're spending it. And so we've tried to stay really open and honest with our clients about it. I don't think most people should be spending all their marketing money right now. I think you should be spending fractions of what you were spending before. Again, that's not in the best interest of my company to say that at least financially, right? That's the thought of most of the agencies and most of the marketing world out there, right? Like if you stop your spend, I stop making money, which means I lay off my employees. But ultimately, it's the right thing to do for the customer. Most of the banks right now really don't want to defer loans. I mean, who wants to defer out their payments? But you know what? It's the right thing to do. And so we've seen a lot of that kind of, as I've sat through other marketing webinars, and just, I always have one playing on my phone while I'm taking calls, or in one of my earbuds, just listening out there what's going on. And you hear a lot of this, that you should continue to express your spend. And I disagree. I think there's some industries that could make that argument. If I owned a grocery store right now with delivery, probably okay to increase my spend. If I owned a lot of the construction services, small home construction, siding, plumbing, HVAC, I could probably make a good argument that I should express my spend a little bit more right now. But for me, the way that I've always done my business is, I started in the recession with this company, and I never lost that grit that came with starting in a negative environment, right? Like it never goes away. I think it's the same thing. There's probably somebody on this call that grew up and remembers the feeling of hunger and the pain that comes with not eating a meal. You don't ever forget that, right? Like that doesn't go away. It's not bred out of us as we grow older. Warren Buffett talks about it a lot, that, he still lives like that. And that's largely why we've seen him do that. I still tend to run businesses in worst case scenario. So Sonny, to your point, we, as an example, I have a physician friend that is in a 10 partner practice. So, all 10 of them are basically equal. And she asked me, do we remove this partner? Is it a good financial decision? And I said, okay, well, this is what I want to ask you. If you remove him from the practice, and you lose every single one of his patients. And she starts laughing. She's like, hold up, no, hold up. 60% of patients will stay at a practice. It's way too hard for them to find a new physician. I said, that's not the point. That is not how you do this. Assume you lose every single one of them. What does that look like financially? Well, we're probably at a $1,000 loss a year. Okay, if I asked you, if you let this person go, is it worth losing $1,000 a month, right? Like, is that something that you can swallow, that you can manage, that you can have a good expectation of output from? And she's like, well, that's stupid. And I said, no, it's stupid to assume something in reality that you can't prove in worst case. So for me as a business owner, I have assumed worst case from day one, right? Like, we've always kept 6 months of payroll in backstock minimum in our bank account, because I assume that something is going to happen at some point in time, right? And so that's kind of how we run. And when I go to the throughput piece, that's how I assume everything. I got to look at this as worst case scenario. How can I still make an effective business? And I think we've seen a lot of people right now in this particular time that haven't run their companies like that, right? I'm a big Six Sigma theory of constraints Toyota Way guy. For anybody that's read The Goal or the Toyota Way theory of constraints, right now is probably the best time to make your business better, because usually in the mess of chaos, it magnifies exponentially the operational issues that we've already had. Like, most of the failures of the company have been there during, before, and will be after we go back to a normal environment. We try and put automation in place to fix those things. That's probably one of the biggest things we hear is like, again, a good example. I want to spend $100,000 to, this happened with a big company here in town. I won't say who, but you guys can probably pick a few. We've got about a 20% turnover with employees every year. So I need to make a application management software that allows us to process all of these applications every year in a much more efficient way. And I'm going, look, why the hell don't you put that $100,000 into fixing the actual operational issue, which is the fact that you've got 20% turnover every year? Why don't you actually fix the root cause of this, right? Like, I understand that we put automation in place. And again, another really good example that everybody on the call will know is Elon Musk. He's been looked at as one of the leaders in automation. And he had a really good interview where he says we over automated. And I said, well, what do you mean, Elon? He said, look, one of my biggest expenses as an organization was quality assurance, QA. So we built a machine that at each step of our facility on the Model 3, it measured what would be panel gap. So, right, it's how close panels are together. And what they're allowed is a 1/16 of an inch error. Because by the time we got done with our 5 checks, we were 5/16 gap in our panels, because the machine allows for a 1/16 of an inch compound rate. And so we sent these cars out. They got delivered. They came back. I had my employees now strip the cars back down, realign the panels. And he goes, I ended up paying 5 or 6 times what I could have had a human being do. And so usually that's what we're seeing in a lot of requests for automation. One more example right now that we recently had was a call with somebody saying, I'd like to go and do e-commerce. As you can imagine, that is a massive request right now, right? We all want to sell our stuff online. How do I touch my consumer less? How do I keep my revenue streams coming in? So almost anybody that can sell on e-commerce has reached out. And even people that shouldn't be selling on e-commerce have reached out. And we had a conversation with a large retailer that has a point of sale system. And again, this is kind of how getting back to like the minimums of what we need to continue running our businesses right now. They said, we'd like to integrate our e-commerce inventory with our point of sale system. So we're not selling things that are out of stock. And we look at their documentation and I say, look, this is about a $50,000 integration, 50. I would not recommend doing it. And he goes, what the hell kind of tech business owner are you? I said, well, firstly, it's the reverse order. I'm a business owner that happens to be in technology. All the companies that I run, there's about 9 of them. They're all in vastly different areas of business. And they're not all tech. Some are service, some are product. They're all over, $1 million a year in gross revenue. So they're not small companies.
So Adam, what do we tell people that members of our chamber? We have the biggest lobbyist of Walmart, and not all people are fans of Walmart, but we also have the general manager of Hy-Vee contacting Deb and myself. But we also have Jen from Lulu's, which it's a small boutique. I mean, what's the answer? Is it the internet? Is it Facebook? Is it
Okay, no. So I mean, okay, so getting back to this e-commerce piece, because I think this will answer it, right? We're looking for so many solutions when a lot of it is old school work. And I think that's been largely lost. And what I mean is I told that customer to save to $50,000 in syncing their e-commerce inventory. And I'll explain this, how this would apply to a Hy-Vee or a restaurant or a dry cleaner or anything right now. They said 50 grand, Adam. And I said, look, take that money. It takes 2 hours a day to reconcile your inventory. Hire a $50,000 a year employee. Employ someone. You don't know if your e-commerce is going to work or not. You're reacting right now. It takes 2 hours a day to update your inventory. 2 hours a day, hopefully, to pull orders. Now I've still got I've got 5 hours left of this employee. Have them clean the bathrooms, have them run live chat, use them to generate revenue in multiple streams. Because if you spend the $50,000 to reconcile your inventory every single day, that money's spent, whether you make it back or not. But instead, solve the issue when it becomes an issue, right? When the economy was really strong and good, people could spend $50,000 and say, yeah, just build it. Who cares? I mean, whatever, it's going to be fine, right? Like, I'll make the money back in 3 months. And so I think to the point now is the answer is getting back to the core problems that we've been solving from day one of our businesses. A lot of us have lost sight of that because it was so easy in the economy and when it was strong to do so many different things and do them half tilt or to non-focus as much and still generate the same revenue.
All fantastic. I'm sure Deb has some questions too, but this being so close to you, I don't remember you having a gray in your beard. How can you, aren't you still in your 20s?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm about halfway through my 30s and my 40s now. So
all right.
I think when we met, maybe about 10 years.
Exactly.
This is not the greatest angle. My photography guys would say, dude, you're shooting up. Like that's not what you should be doing. We'll go down.
Well, you know what? What's really cool is one of my best friends in the world was Sam Walton, and I worked with him for 10 years before he died in 1992. And I see so much of you in him, and
Thanks,
I see so much of him in you. So it's very knowledgeable to have you on this call today. Deb, you want to unmute your? I don't know.
Yes, sir. So Adam, we were talking just briefly about the chambers wanting to help all of our businesses stay as healthy as possible. And we created a way of doing what we call the 3-question, 3-minute interview, and then we're posting it out. Are there other ideas that we should be thinking about with video or all of us working from home at this time to make sure that we're keeping our faces out in front of people so they remember us?
So again, I think largely what, most of my role besides interviewing new clients is mostly business consulting. And that's where I live most of my world, right? Like it ends up tying back into every single department when we're going through projects, from sales to accounting, all the way through to reconciling spend, back down through marketing and sales engineers, and all the way through to the C-level people. I think it's really case by case, and I'm going to do this hopefully in the shortest 3 minutes possible, but this is the best advice I can give somebody right now on the core competencies of this, because this answers, I hope in a way, your question. We forget a lot of the time why we started. And so the example I'll give is I keep getting to work late, and there's no invention of a car right now. So I keep getting to work late because I'm walking. I have 10,000 hours, which we all have a certain number of hours in a week to be able to do something. And clients will come in and they'll say, look, I think in 10,000 hours, I can build this thing that I get into. It's got 4 wheels. I get in, I start it 100% of the time. This car starts. I can get to work on time every day instead of worrying about sidewalks closing, people clogging up the sidewalk, and all these things. Good entrepreneurs, where we've been for a while, with economy that's really good, and where most people are still trying to grasp at straws right now, is they'll come in and they'll say, okay, this took me 10,000 hours. I still have the same available time, but I'll talk to somebody, and entrepreneurs constantly have ideas and innovation. They say, look, I get really bored while I'm driving, so I think I can build a thing that plays music. That's only going to take me 1,000 hours. I'm just going to do it. I get really hot in Kansas when I'm driving in the summer. I can do this thing called air conditioning, and I can build it in, and that's about 1,000 hours, right? And then I could say, oh, you know what? I really like it in the springtime. It's beautiful here. I want to make some windows, and that takes 1,000 hours. And what they don't realize is now this car will start and run 70% of the time. The original issue that we were all solving for when we started our businesses was getting from A to B 100% of the time. What we've done over here, while doing some things that we think are really cool and innovative and all of these other things, is we've missed our core competency, which is if we get from A to B 70% of the time, we're failing 30% of the time. And this is where we've lived as a successful economy for a really long time. With 70% of a huge stock market is amazing. But when our economy is reflecting a negative piece, 70% of a much smaller pie cannot pay our bills. But 100% can get us through. That's why even in the beginning, I've started saying, here's the things that we don't do. So I think video is the same piece. I don't think that most of us really care what McDonald's is doing to handle their COVID-19 outbreak. Same thing with the florist down the street. Same thing with the 10,000 emails that I get every single day from every company telling me how they're handling COVID-19. Instead, I think we can all probably agree on some of the things that we are interested in right now. And largely that's not being sold to. And I still think we're grasping at that old economy. This is not the 3-minute answer, but I think that with our video piece is creating raw, organic content that gets back to the original problem that our businesses were solving. I think that's probably the best advice that we've given, even through a good economy, but none of us want to be sold to, but we all like buying shit. So how do we get back to that? Because that's what started our companies in the first place. And that's what we all built it around, is figuring out that core competency.
Adam, you're a great person. Give us something to end on.
Of all of the cities and counties that I could possibly be quarantined in, I am very happy and glad that I am here in Johnson County with one of the, if you guys have followed the Google tracking, which you should go look at it, they're using Google phones to see how well people are quarantining. Johnson County has been one of the most respected and obedient counties out there in the state, and largely compared to a lot of the country. So I'm really glad that we're all pulling our weight in the ways that we can. And I'd be more than happy to make myself accessible to anybody that's on the call for any questions or anything like that. Even if we stop recording, I don't mind hanging out and doing some Q&A stuff. So
let's
thank you
open
guys
it
for
up
hanging
so
out.
that, let's open it up so we can ask some questions, please.
So,
oh yeah.
Kelsey, if you could go ahead and raise your hand and I'll pick you out, and Kelsey will unmute you. Mark, with a great hairstyle, let's listen to Mark.
It's my Sean Connery look now.
I'd like it.
Hey, Adam, you talked about 6 months of payroll. A lot of people are, we see this with personal life and some of our homeless families at Hillcrest. But what was it that got you to think that far in advance of the what if scenario to have 6 months of payroll set aside where people are not managing their personal finances that way, and businesses aren't either? What was it that caused you to think about that and actually make it happen?
You know, it's probably a blend of a few different things. So I don't know that anybody here has ever seen or been to our first or second office, but
Oh, yeah.
it was on 76th and Troost. So my dad on 7th Heaven. I was in the back of a warehouse, shoved into this little corner where there was bullet holes in our first office. There was no windows. I think they cut a garage door in now. Largely for me, I think it was seeing that how quickly the line went from having to having not. And I knew the few things that I can control as a business owner were a bank account and you know what? I mean, okay, so I think we can get a little bit more real on the call. So those of you guys that know 7th Heaven may know that it got hit by the feds back in 2004. He sells water pipes, glass pipes, bongs, as most of you guys know it. He's been doing it now 50 years this year. Consulted for the state to differentiate what is the difference between a crack pipe, meth pipe, and something that was used for now medical marijuana that's completely legal in Missouri. And obviously did not sell anything that was that. It was very much in his lane, and he'd been to court for the Supreme Court and all kinds of stuff to help give these guidelines. And I watched him get hit in 2004 and lose everything. He fought it, and largely, you know, they were hoping to find other things in the background. There wasn't, as you guys know, he's more worried about his gout than he is smoking a joint. So he is not what you would normally picture as somebody that on 7th Heaven. But I watched him lose everything very quickly. And I knew that I had to plan. He didn't plan on that coming. That wasn't an economy thing. That wasn't something that, you know, no matter what your view is of if it's right or wrong, the outcome was the outcome. It is what it is. And I was a kid in college and watching him lose everything and realizing I needed to do what I could do to make sure that if something that I couldn't even fathom happening, me getting in a car wreck, whatever it is, I knew that I had to do whatever I could to prevent that. So being straight up and honest, I think a lot of it's my upbringing and then watching that happen and seeing how quickly you can go from the top to the bottom without any outside, you know, economy. Like one bad lawsuit from a past employee of a manager that harassed somebody and you don't have the right insurance policy on file or notify them, you know, we're all mostly business owners or people that are responsible for others, and you can't control that. So I had to control what I did.
Great question, Mark. The next person I'd like to call on is former mayor of Mission, Kansas, and she's been kind of quiet lately, but I was wondering, is Laura McConwell, does she have any questions?
Oh, sorry.
Hey.
Hey, no, I've really enjoyed listening to your presentation. It's awesome, and I appreciated your diagram. In fact, I did the little snip of it so I can go study it a little bit later for how that all works. And I, you know, really, I don't have any questions. I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense, that you need to be, you got to have a purpose-filled life and a purpose-driven life to find any satisfaction in what you do. And making money really isn't a good purpose or doesn't provide satisfaction for you. So I appreciate your talking with us. I really do.
It was my pleasure. Yeah.
Fantastic.
You know, I think one thing that maybe also helped put it in perspective, I was a learning disabled kid going through school, and I don't write and read very well. Although I force myself to read about a book a week now. I just process it a little bit differently. I have to read it 10 times. And so for me, I had to find successes in other ways, right? Teachers were saying to my parents, you better get him into a vocation, get him into plumbing or something, because he's going to end up in jail. And back then, computers were also not a career path. And so having my parents come in and go, you need to get outside. You need to do something. I mean, what are you going to do with your life? I wasn't even into gaming. So picture that, like I'm sitting there programming and saying, you got to get into a career, Adam. You got to get off these computers. And thank God I was disobedient as a kid and kept being the rebel on a computer up in my room at 3 o'clock in the morning. But I think we all probably have those uniquenesses that end up getting us there. So thanks for even allowing me to speak to you guys.
I do want to add, based on what you just shared, Adam. So I have a son that's a little bit younger than you are. He's in his late 20s, and he is what I would call a non-traditional learner, and he's
nice,
very, very smart, but school is a place for people that are pretty well left-brained, and if you don't fit in that mold, it makes it a really difficult place for you. And
Right.
so he got into the EL, enhanced learning, and I don't know if you did that, if you were in Shawnee Mission, and if you did that. And I was so grateful for him to have that, just because he could get out of the grind of being in the classroom every day, because his idea of hell was doing another worksheet.
Right.
And I did have his EL teachers pull me aside and talk to me, because I thought, well, maybe I needed to, you know, try ADD medication for him and all this. And they were sort of projecting, because they'd had some issues with their sons, and they were concerned about, you know, about my son. And, you know, my son is doing well, has not been as financially successful as you, but he is awesome. He's living on his own. He's loving what he's doing. He's, you know, he's a great person. And I told those, they were women, I told them, I said, you know, my job is to make sure that you people don't damage my son's self-image. That's how I kind of viewed my job, because
Right.
there is nothing wrong with him. And there are so many different people in the way your brains work in this world. And that's what makes it really cool. So God love you.
Thank
I'm
you.
here with
Yeah.
you, and I get it. I get it. So just be ready for those kids, because the two babies
I'm
that you brought
on,
in the
man.
world,
I love that.
they're going to probably be on their own. They're going to be, no, not probably. They will be on their own path.
Well, I
Thank
tell you
you.
what,
You know,
Laura
yeah, that
McConwell's
means a
dad
lot.
is
Thanks.
awesome. We all love Ed too. So,
Well, thank you.
well, I tell you what, let's go to the president, or actually the chairman of our Chamber of Commerce, if Tony Lopez is still on the call, and if you can unmute him, Kelsey. Let's see what if he has any questions. Tony Lopez is the Chief Tony Lopez. He's over 9 of our cities. So, any questions?
Actually, 8 of our cities.
Okay, 8.
Nice. Yeah.
I'm over 10. You're over 8. So,
Well, thanks. I was just kind of sitting here taking this all in, and just I was fascinated by all of this. This was really good.
Thanks,
You
man.
know, I was curious just to see what all was going to be, you know, presented, and yeah, this was really good. Thank you.
Yeah, man. I it's so nice, you know, being that kid. And still, you know, part of the best part of growing up like I did and struggling through it is the fact that, you know, I realized really quickly. So I get to go, if those of you guys that know Horizons, right, there's a lot of kids out there with different developmental issues. But getting back to every single person on this call, there's way more that unifies us in our days than don't. And one of the things I'm really open about is mental health, right? Like I have always struggled, and you know, I'll probably be on antidepressants the rest of my life. And I don't mind saying that openly and publicly. I think that most people, when we wake up in the morning and we stand in front of the mirror, I think very few of us sit there and go, holy shit, that is a great looking human being. My God, you are stunning, right? Like a lot of us still stand there in the mirror and we have those questions. And I think that those shift throughout our whole life process, throughout our days, right? Like little subtle things that we think we're not good at, or that we think we could have done better on. And so for me, again, I use a lot of the foresight to know like what I have in my control, and being able to be a part of something like this, I think shores that up even more, right? Like whenever somebody says like, I appreciate you doing this, for me, I appreciate you guys being here to even give me an outlet. And I mean, it's an honor for me, right? This is something I never thought that I'd have been able to do as a kid. I never thought that I deserved to do it. And it's been a long journey getting there.
Adam, I've known you for, I guess, close to 10 years now. Of course, I don't make as much money as you do, but you know, there's one other person I'd like to get on the line. Her name's Linda Adams. She's one of our great people with the Chamber of Commerce. She does things for us, and she tries to tell us how can we get our face out there? How can we get more Facebook likes? How can we get more of this and more of that? So Linda, if you can unmute yourself, or let Kelsey unmute. There you go. And Linda, if anything you can ask Adam.
Adam, yeah, I do the digital side, do some small websites and whatnot.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, there's something for everybody, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
totally.
yeah, there's something out there for everybody. I do a lot with Google My Business. How do you feel about, I mean, it just seems to really help with the small local companies. Is that working for some of the larger companies you're working with?
Yeah. So, okay. Really good question. One of the things that, so, your Google My Business, obviously, I'm going to share my screen. So there's a few things that every single person here, if you guys have a site, there's like some really basic stuff that again, no matter who you use as a web developer, as a marketer, any of this stuff, right? So if I'm searching for, let's just do this. So if I'm searching Lifted Logic, all right. So one of the big pieces, right? This is your Google My Business. If I'm searching web design, Overland Park, your Google My Business pieces are going to pull through the local listings that are closest in your areas and your pieces, right? So you're going to see a listing of companies. The thing that most people have gotten this stuff kind of knocked out. One of the big low-hanging fruits that most companies aren't checking up on is the actual code that recursively matches from their own site back through to Google My Business. So if you just search structured data testing tool and I type in my website, liftedlogic.com, right? What it's going to do is it's going to scan my site, because when you do web design near me, the way that it matches up the companies here to where you're at comes through your schema.
Yeah.
And so that coming into you guys' sites and just looking through, like, okay, does this match exactly back to my Google My Business listing, right? And you guys can just look at it. And if it doesn't, then that's when you need to reach out to your marketing agency and say, why is my location schema not pulling through? So yeah, I mean, it is definitely a huge piece, especially for, companies that are handling near me searches. Yeah, it's definitely really important, and it's a really easy low-hanging fruit that, again, most companies are kind of not. If the phone numbers don't match, if the address has a W on one and a West on another, again, the thought process is that, most of these technologies are robots. So, while we process through the example of, if I typed in oak cabinet and Google showed me a spruce cabinet, we would all say, well, why? And if I could say, well, it's a cheaper, more sustainable wood, and I think it's a better fit for your application. Oh, okay, perfect. Now, if we type in oak cabinet and Google came back and changed one word and said, how about oak flooring? We'd go, what the hell are you showing me flooring? And remembering that most of what we talk about in digital marketing is a computer program. It doesn't understand subject, predicate, adverb, adjective. It matches words, and a lot of the time we screw up most of our marketing. So, the way that we title things and match, like, attention is in the details. It's awesome that you focus on that. Like, I think that's,
it's fun.
Yeah.
Adam,
get reviews. Go load your reviews up.
There you go. Yes, reviews. Everybody go out and do reviews for each other now.
We're 15 minutes over our 30 minutes, but I want to go ahead and end this with Deb Settle saying a few comments. And thank you so much for your time. It just gives me goosebumps every time I listen to you, because you're such an inspiration to everyone here in Kansas City. So Deb, take it over.
You really are something special, because every time I get the chance to talk to you, I learn more and more of the accomplishments and just the things that you've had the chance to do. But as important, the positivity that you just exude out. So I know that each and every one of us have to feel that today. I am told throughout my life that I'm pretty positive, but I don't think I come close to being as positive as you. So you've been a great inspiration to me today. I've learned some things. I made a lot of notes. I saw other people scratching away too, so I know that we're all taking something away. To have you share some of this time with us has been quite the honor. So thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Deb. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys again for having me here.
You're awesome.
I think I get a lot more out of it than you guys do. So thank you guys.
Thank you,
Thank
Adam.
you. Thank you,
Yeah.
everybody, for joining us today. We're
Thank
doing
you.
webinars at 2:00 every Thursday. We have several lined up for the next month because none of us know what the future holds. I know that we are all working together very diligently to make sure that we're keeping each other healthy and in connection with each other, because that is so important right now. So on Tuesday morning, you can come join us for We're Talking Tuesday. Tuesday afternoon, we have happy hours that we can just talk about what's happening in our life. And then again, our webinars. So please come back and join us.
And I was going to say one last thing.
Please.
I do have a TED. If you guys are interested on the throughput and the business side of the digital marketing piece, Megan asked, I did do a TED talk last year, and it'll help you guys kind of understand a lot more. It's a really good, it's not salesy at all. It is literally an informative piece on how to like measure marketing, look at throughput, look at turns, look at velocity. And so that would be a really good resource, I think. If you just search Adam Fichman, and it's Fichman on YouTube, and TED or whatever, but you'll find it.
I think it's on your website, isn't it, Adam?
It's probably on our site too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's on the website.
We'll share that, Adam. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's a
totally.
good
Thank
idea.
you guys for having me.
Yeah, it's on the site. Thanks,
Thanks.
Adam. Bye,
See y'all soon.
guys.
All right.
Thanks, Adam.
We're recording
Thank you,
this now.
guys.
We're going to go ahead and end the recording now. Thank you so much.